earlier than we expected to be recording these. We sometimes don't start these till a little closer to 11 Central, but it's 10:14 Central, Saturday evening. Week 12 is wrapping up as we speak. Most of the games are wrapped up. We have a few more out on the western part of the country that are still going on into the night, but man, it was a roller coaster of emotions, my friend. I don't know how you handled today. I started today on campus at Texas A&M, and I'll get talk share a little bit more about that experience here in a little bit. But just one of the all-time college football days for me as a fan, and I hope that so many other people were able to enjoy it that way as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, this was look, any day that we get a slate like this, we're excited, but man, the highlights today were so good. I feel like every big game today was a great one. I feel like there were so many that mattered. There were so many that mattered for standings. There were some real statements made. For me personally, it was great to kind of nail the preview. We were talking about that a little bit off the top. I was like, man, my preview this week was fantastic. And it feels like it's been a little bit since I've kinda nailed the entire thing, so I felt good getting back in a personal W column right there, and yeah, it's pretty good, but man, like, just I mean, what a week. There's some upsets, there's some almost upsets, there's some, things that went pretty much the way that they shoulda gone, and end of the day, what it's done is it's made a really, really entertaining kind of last stanza for the college football season as we get to the conference championship games and playoffs and everything. It's really set the stage for something that should be pretty magic.
Yeah, we got a lot more clarity on those conference races today. We separated some contenders from maybe some that are not quite going to get to that level this year for the college football playoff. Want to start just by saying, hey, if you're new here, welcome in. This is the Week 12 live show here on the Three Technique. Would love if you would follow along the journey with us. If you're a regular viewer, if you are here for the first time, welcome in. So excited to have you as we break down all the action from Week 12. Want to start by talking about our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use the code 3TechPod at sign up to get $100 in free play when you play your first $5. And do want to remind you to subscribe as well. Make sure you are subscribed. Follow along on Instagram and Twitter at 3TechPod as we continue this show all the way through the rest of this season, all the way through the national championship game in January and into the off season for 2026 as well. Garrett, we get to start not how we were planning to start today. We have to start, absolutely must start in College Station, Texas, with a historic comeback for Texas A&M. Garrett, I'll just share how I took in this game today because I think we don't want to spend a ton of time on this one. If you watch the show, you know that we are fans of Texas A&M, so we have to just share our emotions on this game, kind of have a therapy session, honestly, about it. Because, listen, man, I showed up to a tailgate on campus at A&M about 8:30 this morning. Everything was going great, man. Like the vibes, I don't think had ever been higher on campus at A&M. I've been to a lot of games at Kyle Field. No one all week in the media in College Station was even considering the possibility that A&M would lose this game. Like no one was considering it. Everybody just going on to Sanford and then going on to Texas, penciling us in, sharping us in at 11-0. And boy, did the Gamecocks have other ideas, and Shane Beamer especially, as you listen to him in that mid-quarter interview. But the short of it is, if you've already forgotten from the 11 a.m. slate this morning, Texas A&M falls down 30-3 at halftime, storms back, scores 28 unanswered points in the second half, almost gives up the game again in the fourth quarter with a fumble on the goal line when they were trying to go up 38-30, and then gets a couple clutch sacks to close it out and hold on for dear life to win and go 10-0 for the first time since 1992. I just found myself speechless after this game, Garrett. And I've been really trying to collect my thoughts about this game. Have some numbers that I want to throw out there here in a little bit as well. But what were your thoughts as the roller coaster of this game unfolded?
Y'all got nervous? What are you talking about, man? I was never in doubt, all right? We've seen this team pull through in the clutch. No, seriously, that was remarkable. Honestly, like just on the emotional side of it, right? Yeah, as a fan when you're watching it, you want to see your team do all right. The first couple, scores for South Carolina go through, you're like, yeah, it's fine. We're gonna be all right. There's no problem here. I've seen this team battle and compete. there's only so much that you can do wrong before you start to say, "Hey, this may just not be our day." Like, we just maybe didn't have this one today. And that's what it started to feel like at a certain point. At a certain point, there's only so many, you get the big pick that goes back down towards the goal line, and then it sets you up for first and goal inside the 10, and you're ready to go. And then you can't come away with any points. You drop a touchdown pass, doink the field goal off of the upright, and you're feeling like you're right back in it. You get the ball back, you drive back down, you throw a pick in the end zone, then you immediately let up a touchdown to the net. I mean, at a certain point, you're just like, what could more? And I said this, both in our group text and to some of the people I was watching the game with. A&M made every mistake you could possibly make in the first half. It was everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. It's hard to think of as a football watcher, fan, knower. It's hard to think of a thing that you could have added into the pile in the first half that could have gone worse. And there was no room for error. And fortunately, in the second half, that was about as perfect a game as you can play. Marcel Reed looked fantastic in the second half. There's a lot to be said about him and his performance, a lot to be said about that defense and what they were able to do in the second half as well, kinda shutting it down and saying, like, "Don't worry, we will give you the opportunity, to pull this one off on the offensive side," and, like, man, just what a team win in that second half, something I don't think we'll ever see anything close to. That feels almost like from the football gods, that was payback for that UCLA game back in 2017 where we had to watch our team fall apart down the stretch. Now we get to watch our team not fall apart, and instead it was the other guys falling apart, and we pulled off the big comeback.
Here, just to put this into perspective, man, like the numbers have been rolling in all day. You've probably seen these on Twitter, but since 2004, SEC teams in SEC play that fell down by 27 plus were 0 and 286. That's not great odds.
That's
They
not
are now 1
fantastic.
and 286. The first half was just like you said, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for A&M. It was a true Murphy's Law situation. South Carolina was out gaining A&M at halftime 312 to 132. You mentioned the turnovers, Marcel Reed, a couple of interceptions. Out rushing A&M 108 to -9 at halftime. It was bad. And I was going through it, honestly. Like, we can talk about just what this means, bigger picture here in a second. But, you start spiraling when your team finds themselves in that situation. We have the battered Aggie syndrome, of course, and so many other things that we can pull back on. But you're starting to think, like, man, the committee's going to hate this showing. If we lose to Texas and Austin, like, we might fall out of this whole thing. I texted you guys. I think we're out if we don't shape up and we lose to Texas and Austin. Like, that is a terrible last taste to give the committee. But then everything changes, right? Marcel Reed becomes a completely different player in the second half. He's 16 of 20 for 298 and 3 touchdowns. Overall, he threw for 439 and 3 touchdowns. So all of them in the second half there. It was his new career high. His previous high was 361 back in his first appearance again in the Texas Bowl against Oklahoma State a couple years ago. And then the defense, really, I think that's the unsung heroes of the second half for Texas A&M, right? Because that's what it took. It wasn't going to just be coming back by getting scores. You had to get the stops too. In the second half, A&M's defense shut out the Gamecocks, allowed just 76 yards. That equates to 2.9 yards per play and 4 sacks, including a couple of huge ones with the Gamecocks having the ball with a chance to kick a field goal to win there at the end. But I mean, you can slice this up 7 ways to Sunday. You talk about just the Aggie jokes were writing themselves. The comeback becomes just this epic statement, I think, for Texas A&M that, hey, we're not going to let this be like previous years. I think the narrative would have 1000% been had they not even completed the comeback or given up the field goal on that last drive, right? The narrative 1000% would have been this is the same old A&M. Doesn't matter. They're benefiting from a soft schedule, and that may play out to be true. But those guys in that locker room, at least for one more week, are saying, "Hey, this is a different team, and this is going to be a different ending to the season than you've seen time and time before at Texas A&M."
Well, and it could also be true that, this team is actually a very good football team and that what today showed is they have that kind of DNA. And then it turns out that at the end of the year, they still get beat by someone who's also just a good football team, right? Like maybe they make it into the playoff, make a bit of a run, lose to Indiana or Ohio State or someone like that. That's also a possibility, right? There's a chance that maybe, yes, it's been kind of a weaker schedule. There's a chance that it's weaker because you're beating everybody, right? That's also a part of it is all those teams have a loss in their, column because of you. And at the end of the day, I think uh, there's a lot of people who are going to want to make a lot of this. There's a lot of people that are going to want to make a lot of the fact that South Carolina was 3-6 and only has one conference win the whole thing. And I'd like you to keep the same energy that you did last week when we saw Indiana do the heroics against Penn State. I just keep the same energy, right? If you were impressed by that, be impressed by that. And if you were like me and you criticized that, then like, look, it's my team, so I'm happy they won. But I'm not going to sit here and say this is a fantastic win. All right, this is not, amazing. This is not immaculate, but if that was a Fernando Mendoza Heisman moment, then this is a Marcel Reed Heisman moment, right? If this was, the moment where Indiana proved that they're for real and they can dig deep and win a game when they're not supposed to, well, then this was the same thing for Texas A&M. Okay, you can't delineate between the two things. Right now, it's Ohio State and it's everybody else. Ohio State's best team currently in the country, but it's a gap, but then there's a lot of teams that are still competing. I think this shows that Texas A&M belongs in that conversation, not because they beat 3-7 South Carolina, but because they pulled off this comeback. Not a lot of teams would have the ability to do something like that. You can say they put themselves in that position, but they still pulled themselves out, right? And that's, I think, a big deal for this team, for the culture, for the win. And if A&M does go on to reach their goals this season, if they do go on to achieve great things this season, a lot of people are going to look back at this game as a pivotal moment when it was absolutely in doubt. Your season was dead and over, and you found a way to resurrect it, bring it back to life, and pull something together.
I think as we close out talking about this game, and I'm sure there will be so much more to that comes up about it, and just I can't wait to watch the Pulse this week and see the halftime speech that Elko gave because that's going to be incredible. But as you project forward now, A&M, according to the All-State Playoff Predictor, actually has a 100% chance of making the college football playoff. So it's not a question
Oh
of if they'll
yeah,
get in.
watch this.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody could figure out how to mess that up, it would be Texas A&M. But they have Samford next week. They will get to 11 wins, regardless of what happens in Austin. I think that game is more about keeping the Longhorns out than and protecting your seeding and obviously getting to the SEC championship. But as you project forward, as you think about that game against Texas, as you think about a potential SEC championship and then a run in the playoff, what has you most concerned about the Aggies right now? What if you could boil it down to one thing has you concerned that they won't reach a championship ceiling?
I think the big thing that has me concerned about Texas A&M is that they still haven't found a way to put together a full effort for 4 quarters in a game this year. I have not yet seen them put together good offense and good defense for 4 straight quarters in a resounding win. Against a good team, against a bad team, winning by 10 points, winning by 30 points, whatever it is, I still haven't really seen that, right? You look at every single big moment for A&M, and they've had some big ones, and they've won by big margins, and they've been dominant against teams who, we later want to discredit, but there's always that moment, right? You can look at the, last game against Missouri, right? You didn't really start very fast on offense. You left a lot of points on the table in the first half. Okay, go back and look at the game against LSU. That second quarter was atrocious. Look back at Arkansas. You didn't play good defense. Look at Florida. You didn't start the game well on defense, right? And then you kind of slowed down all of a sudden. You can go back through the entire schedule and start to look at all the moments where they found ways to not necessarily play their best football. That's not gonna fly against the best of the best, right? I think there's a lot of teams that you can beat just playing 3 quarters of your best football, falling asleep at the wheel for one of them. There's a lot of teams you can beat just having a good offense or just having a good defense or, kinda being okay at both. But when you get to the top and you're thinking about teams like Ohio State and Indiana, those teams are not gonna get beat because you showed up with a B plus game somewhere. You have to bring your A game, you have to be able to show up and do that. Currently, if I'm gonna pick, against A&M, it's gonna be because, hey, I don't think that they can pull up and do that, for 4 quarters, right? If there's a team that show me they can be dominant for 4 quarters, I'm gonna go with that team as opposed to the Aggies right now.
Let me unmute myself first, but I'm with you on that. I think it's really concerning that we are 10 weeks into the season and we still haven't seen that, right? The closest I could say that you saw that was the Missouri game, but even then the offense took a
Yeah.
while to get going. Yeah, it's really concerning when you think about that. For me, it's the big plays though. And I think that this defense is one that it's really difficult to string long drives together. We've talked about that a lot. But when you're getting an 80-yard touchdown pass, or it's just a given that you're going to give up a 45-yard run and they're probably going to score on that drive, it's just really hard to see this defense sustaining that and not getting worn out against a better team, against an Indiana or an Ohio State or someone in the SEC championship. So the warts are there. They are what they are at this point. I don't know how much you can do to really fix that. Maybe you can tune it up against Samford. Maybe you get a big performance going into the playoff against Texas or in the SEC championship that gets you feeling that way. But the bottom line is, Garrett, they're winning in spite of those things. And when
Mhm.
one side of the ball has a bad half, the other side steps up, right? Or when the whole team has a bad half, like they did today, everybody ups their game in the second half and just does what it takes to win. So that's what I'm most encouraged about, doing the little interview trick there where you flip the negative into the positive.
There you go.
That's what I'm most encouraged about is
Well,
they find multiple ways to win. And when one side or one player or one position group is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, everybody else tends to pick them up eventually.
the good news for A&M is this hasn't been the case yet, but if you wanna go find another possible issue, I think the kicking game needs a lot of work because, man, like if you're telling me that, Marcel Reed's going to be able to lead a drive against Texas late in that game in Austin, and they're going to be down a single point, and you can set up a 35-yard field goal. There's no part of me that loves that situation. No part of me wants to rely on any type of field goal right now out of a place kicker at Texas A&M. I don't understand what's going on there. I don't know why you can't get a kicking game right. Put him in the facility and tell him he can't leave till he hits 100 in a row. I don't know what you gotta do. Like, you gotta find a way to kick the football. It's I understand if it's, missing 50 yarders or like, getting in his head for a second, but it's like, man, when you're doinking it from, 20 something, that's just no good. Like, you can't do that. And in a game which, again, like we said, came down to the wire and all they needed was a field goal at the end to go up. You would have loved those 2 field goals from earlier in the game. Now, obviously, that doesn't matter if your guys are dropping passes, throwing picks in the end zone, the whole thing. So, that's not like it was the main problem today was the kicking, but that could be a main problem that ends up holding A&M back down the stretch.
Yeah, good point on that. That's so true, and it has been a problem for a good chunk of the year. Yeah, like I said, A&M 2 more games in the regular season: Samford and Texas, and then if they beat Texas, they will be. It's looking like we'll get into the SEC standings here in a little bit, but it's looking like it's a win and you're in the SEC championship against Texas. Lose and you're probably the odd man out. But we'll see. So still so much to be decided there. Let's go. Let's continue in the SEC, Garrett. I'll let you pick. Where do you want to go next? You want to go to Athens or Tuscaloosa?
I wanna go where I called my shot, man. Let's go to Tuscaloosa, where I
Right on.
absolutely nailed the Oklahoma upset.
You did. So I'll throw this over to you, man. Tell us what you were looking for and what you kind of nailed in this one.
Man, so let me tell you. So the thing that I noticed when I was doing my research in the preview was how bad Alabama was on the ground. They just don't run the football. That's not a big part of their game. And how Oklahoma's really good at getting after the quarterback. And look, I know that the numbers may not bear it out that this was a really rough game for Ty Simpson. Like he threw for over 300 yards. He did have the pick six, obviously, but man, this
It
was a
was a bad
tough
game.
game for Ty
Yeah.
Simpson. Like this was a tough go of it. Their D line came out. They caused a lot of problems early. Bama kind of settled in over the course of the game, but down the stretch, man, they got after Ty Simpson and they made life absolute misery for him. Bama defense was swarming a lot in this game as well. Like Oklahoma did not have a lot of success on the offensive side. But that's not what I thought they needed to do to win this game. I thought they needed to get turnovers. I thought they needed short fields. I thought they needed to kick. Man, there's very few people I like more than that kicker at Oklahoma right now. Like that guy just got some kind of other aura about him. He's so much fun. I love watching him play football. So there's that side of it. But for me, it was all about figuring out as Oklahoma how to turn this thing into a rock fight and just play some good defense and make it happen. And that's what happened down the stretch, right? It's 23 to 21. I think that qualifies as a rock fight, lots of kicking. You know, I think about some of the stuff they had to do. They had to go on like a short field to score a touchdown. Like that was kind of it for Oklahoma, short field touchdown plus a pick six and then kick a bunch of field goals and get out of there. Like I will take that as an, fan of Oklahoma. If you told me that we were getting those two things, a short field that Mateer can run it in on, and then that pick six, yeah, I will absolutely take that. So, man, I feel great for the people in Norman. One thing I wanted to bring up, and this is 100% just throwing a bone to the Sooner fans that we've been a little bit hard on. Oklahoma fans, y'all absolutely deserve this because when y'all made the move to the conference, y'all were the afterthought. Everyone was excited about Texas and Sark and everything else. And yeah, they went and they, made it to the conference championship and they made it to the semifinals last year. And that was a lot of fun. But man, nobody was thinking about little old Oklahoma over here, right? Little old Oklahoma that's, got their championship and they've, won most of the Big 12 championships and, y'all got overlooked. And y'all have now beaten Bama twice in a row since joining the conference. It ruined their season a couple of times now. And you guys are squarely in it for a playoff spot. Y'all will be ranked top 10 at the very, very least. Y'all probably make a big jump up and get close to, I'd probably put them at 6 or 7 right now with the win that they had today. And I think they absolutely deserve it. The opportunity for them to get better, if they start showing up with any semblance of an offense somewhere, good night, man. The Sooners are a good football team.
I don't know exactly where that's going to come from, but they don't exactly need that, right? So you look at the numbers
Mateer
today.
needs a
Yes.
healthy hand or something. I don't know what's going on.
Well, he says he's good. He says he's healthy and he doesn't feel any pain from that surgery that he had just a few weeks ago. And I guess I
Well, he
believe
threw
him.
for 138 today. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, so let me talk about that because you mentioned Ty Simpson, right? And the numbers, if you're just a box score watcher, you're like, man, what happened, Ty Simpson? He must have had like there must have been some fumbles from the running backs, or they must have like gone for it on fourth down and not gotten it a couple times. You mentioned John Mateer's numbers. He had a higher QBR than Ty Simpson, who threw for over 300 yards. So this was a game where Oklahoma, I think when the did we really get beat that bad graph comes out, it's going to be a negative success rate, right?
There's a
I think
good chance. Yeah.
there's a very good chance because Oklahoma was outgained 406 to 212, biggest differential in a loss in 30 years for Oklahoma. But they really took advantage of those short fields. Their longest drive the entire game was 41 yards. And they didn't
Which
need
is
to. They
just
had
crazy.
and they won in
They
Tuscaloosa.
won.
Um,
And their leading rusher,
so
a lot of this for me too was I was factoring in the fact that Xavier Robinson had looked a lot better. He ran for 34 yards, that's it. Like, Bama's
yeah,
defense played a great game. You can't take anything away from what Bama's defense did, but man, did your offense let you down. I don't know. I was looking through a little bit of the Twitter stuff for Bama, kinda seeing what their fan base was saying after the game, and man, like, the frustration they have at how bad the offense is regressing here towards the end of the year, I totally get it. And, like, look, they're playing good teams, and it's not like even look at the Georgia win, right? The Georgia win is a good win. You only put up like what 24 in that game. So like it's not like they were putting up massive totals, but man,
and got shut out in the second half in
right,
that
it got
game.
shut out in the second half, right? So like, it's not like the offense has been electric the whole year, and then you just failed to show up for this one game. But man, it's been better than this, and you've been able to score a lot better than this. But I'm telling you, man, when you don't have a run game and you become one dimensional, it's easy for a defense to line up and play you. And when you get a good defense like Oklahoma, who gets after the passer, covers well, like that's gonna be a problem. And I said it, and I was ready for it, and like props to them. Looking over at Bama's rushing numbers too, Daniel Hill had 60 yards, Jam Miller had 27. Like that's not very good.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit more about Bama in a second because they have backed themselves into a corner now and created a very interesting Iron Bowl in a couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, I want to give Oklahoma a couple more flowers. This huge, huge win, program shifting win, I think, for Oklahoma in the way that they have, like you said, come into the SEC, beaten Bama twice, put themselves squarely in the hunt for a playoff spot with 2 weeks to go. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. We'll talk about that in a second. But the defensive line, without their best player on the defensive line, right? Still getting 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, just really suffocating Bama when it mattered the most. And I think all that being said, right? Give Oklahoma all the flowers, finding a way to win. Doesn't matter how you win. They don't draw pictures of the final score, right? You got the dub. If I'm a Bama fan, I am very, very frustrated with how this played out. Like you mentioned, with you looking into the Bama fans, this one really slipped away from 'em. You look at the first half in particular, right? They give up a punt return on their first punt that sets up an Oklahoma field goal. You have the pick six, you have the fumble on the punt yourself. The field goal gets blocked as time expires. Your kicker is screaming at his long snapper for some reason. That's not a good look. And then you still have a chance to go win the game in the fourth quarter, and you just never can. Like one thing after another happens to get in your way of coming back and winning that game at home. And now you find yourself, after you lose to Florida State to open the season, you now have a loss to Oklahoma as well. You find yourself where this Iron Bowl, you could either win it and find yourself in the conference championship game, or you could lose it and you're out of the playoff. Like this is now a massive Iron Bowl, and oh boy, does Auburn, you know they're going to play loose with an interim head coach and just play with nothing to lose at home.
Well, and we saw what they looked like against Vanderbilt when they pulled that one off. I mean, they've been playing pretty dang well on the offensive side of the football the last, few weeks. And I think their defense is pretty dang salty too. Like, and if you tell me that they can at home as well get to set that one up where, they can not worry about the run so much and just key in on the passer, it's a good enough Auburn defense to get it done. I mean, they can definitely pull that off. And you know that there's everything in the world that they want. Nothing will surpass it, like the ability to send Bama packing, make them 9-3, keep them out of the SEC championship game, keep them out of the playoff. Like nothing would make that fan base happier after the year that they've had than getting to do that to Alabama.
Mm. Man, that's the stuff you dream of. I think it was either Peter Burns or one of the SEC network guys. Like rivalry week in the SEC this year is going to feed families. You could potentially have, just off the top of my head, Auburn could knock off Alabama, right? Tennessee could knock Vanderbilt out of a potential playoff spot. Oklahoma needs to take care of business against LSU. They also have Missouri next week, so shifting to Oklahoma really quickly in the middle of this point I'm making. Oklahoma has a tough two-game close, but if they can win those two, they're in the playoff. Obviously, they
And
have to beat
doing it
LSU on
against
the last
Bama
week of the
shows
season.
like that was the hardest one for them. So they've done the hardest part, just finish these last two, right? That's not that good of an LSU team. Missouri again
It's at
without their
home too.
quarterback.
Yeah,
So like you can do this. It's just gonna take a lot of that focus, which, I know that there's a lot of Oklahoma fans right now saying, like, man, I've watched this team kind of struggle and shut down a little bit over the last couple seasons and does not quite get it done. Like it's right there, Oklahoma. It's so close.
it's right there. It's absolutely so. Rivalry week is going to feed families. Just look up and down that slate. There's playoff implications all over the place. Garrett, let's go on to the other big game in the SEC that just went final before we hit record. That is the Georgia Bulldogs winning 35-10 over the Texas Longhorns in Athens. This is a game that had some interesting flow to it because it starts out, Texas comes out, they kick a field goal on their first drive, they move the ball until they get to the red zone. Stop me if you've heard that before, Longhorn fans. And then Georgia, Mike Bobo was in his bag early, man. Like it looked like they had, and Herbie and Fowler were even saying on the broadcast, man, it looks like they've got this Texas defense confused. They put up 14 quick points on their first two drives. And then Pete Wikowski makes some really nice adjustments and makes Gunnar Stockton uncomfortable for the next basically two quarters. The middle two quarters were, I would say, defined by the Texas defense. They kind of controlled everything there. Then the tide starts to shift, right? Gunnar Stockton throws an interception. Texas punches it in on the short field. But after that, Georgia, excuse me, just goes on a 21-0 run to close this thing out. You have the ballsy onside kick from Kirby Smart to really build some separation there. You have the ballsy going for it on fourth down multiple times in the possession where they're up only 14-10. This game could have gone a lot differently if the fourth quarter didn't shake out the way they did. Texas was close in this one, but ultimately, I think the better team really flexed their muscle down the stretch here.
Yeah, and this game, there's going to be a lot of people that want to talk about this game from a like what did Texas not do standpoint, and I won't go there. This is all about the Georgia Bulldogs and what they did right. First off, they scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, though the whole game both teams only scored 24 up to that point. So they turned it up in the fourth quarter, and that's where you make your money, right? You got to make your money in the fourth. You got to finish game strong. And that fourth quarter was just dominated by Georgia. They just did everything that they needed to do. They got their pass rush going. They have not been able to rush the passer this year, and they rattled Arch at times. There were moments where they got him thinking a little bit, confused a little bit, and they affected the game from that spot. You think about the 2 fourth down conversions, and there's gonna be a lot of people complaining about the refs, and I get that, and, whatever, Texas, welcome to the SEC, Georgia's gonna get calls, okay? Welcome. Go ask Auburn how it feels, okay? That's just how that works. You think about that from that standpoint as well, but they get the 2 fourth down conversions, they go up 21-10, the onside kick, and then the touchdown, now it's 28-10. They shut down the Texas run game. Texas had 36 real rushing yards if you're not counting sacks, 19 if you do. Running the game was completely out of the picture for them. And they did a really good job covering the shorter stuff, which is another point that I brought up in the preview, which is that a lot of this short game passing was going to get tackled in the open field, and they weren't going to make as many plays as they had been making against some worse teams, which there were plays that were made. And, Texas receivers, they did a good job leveraging at times and getting some open spots and, really finding ways to get the ball down the field a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is about Georgia. This is about what Georgia did right. They did so many things right. Arch was fine, right? Like Arch didn't play a bad game. I didn't think he did all right. But the thing about fine is it doesn't get it done on the road in the SEC against a really good team, right? If you have a fine performance where you're like, all right, that's just not good enough to beat really, really good teams. Uh, you have to be special if you're going to win those types of games. He goes 27 for 43 at 251, one touchdown, one pick. A lot of those yards came on that last drive that they, didn't end up scoring on, but they had that kind of last drive where they ran it back down the field. Texas isn't eliminated by this, but they're definitely on life support, and a lot of this is gonna be I think a lot of this will unfairly come back down on Arch, but I don't think it's on Arch. Like, I don't think that this game was on Arch. You gotta be able to run the football. You gotta be able to catch pass. There's some drops for Texas. There are penalties that definitely hurt them at times. You just can't do some of the stuff that Texas did and then expect to win.
Yeah, and that's well said. You got to be able to give him some help on the ground for sure. You got to block a pass rush that has
Yep.
been towards the bottom of the FBS in getting to the quarterback this year. And you've got to catch the ball when your quarterback does put it on your hands. There were a couple of really big drops in the first half as well. But yeah, I think the problem with Texas right now is they have an elite defense, but they just do not trust their quarterback to throw the ball downfield accurately. That's so apparent. And he's going to make one wow throw for every 3 or 4 that he misses on, right? And that's going to give you hope and that's going to keep you engaged and wanting him to just seize that and take that next step. That's pretty much every college quarterback though. And I think like they do not trust him to win games with his arm down the field. So they're trying to do the dink and dunk stuff that we talked about ad nauseum on the previous show. So I won't get into that again. But that doesn't work against a defense like Georgia's. And Georgia went into a too high shell for a good chunk of that game, just didn't let them beat them over the top. They're okay if Arch was going to hit a couple intermediate balls. He couldn't do it consistently again. And then when it ended up being a dump off underneath, it was tackled relatively quickly. There weren't a lot of missed tackles. So credit the Georgia defense for stepping up. That's all of a sudden a unit that much maligned earlier in this year. It seems like they've figured some stuff out as we get into the most important part
Well,
of the year.
to give them a little bit of a, like, this and that, a lot of that comes down to slow processing from Arch in some of those longer situations, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I pointed out was he does process a little bit slow on some of these longer developing things down the field, and when they needed that because they weren't in these, ahead of the chain situations, he wasn't able to deliver that consistently, right? He did it sometimes, and you're right, he hit some intermediate throws. I think he's developing, he's getting better, but it just
But it's
wasn't
not
better
to the
enough.
point yet where a defense the quality of Georgia is going to care. Like
Yes.
they're just going to sit back just like they did, play a too high shell, and not let him beat him with an 80-yard
Yeah,
bomb,
because 'cause they're
right?
not gonna
Like, and
panic over, a 20-yard or a 30-yard completion.
exactly.
They're just gonna go win the next rep and trust that their defense is gonna hold, and when you get down to the red zone, you're not gonna score, right? There's it's just what the best of the best do, especially on defense, and that's what Georgia is. They're the best of the best on defense. They're playing extremely good football right now. They're the kind of team I don't want to play in the playoffs. I want zero part of that Georgia Bulldog team right now. That's the kind of team I want to watch somebody else take care of in the playoff, right? As my team's on the other side of the bracket. And I want them to figure that out. Maybe they can pull the upset, take advantage of an injury or something like that, and then I'll deal with the rest of the bracket later because I don't want any part of the Georgia Bulldogs right now. That's a really good football team.
Yeah, Georgia looks awesome. Their offense, man, like putting up 35 on this Texas defense is incredible. I don't care if you're playing at home, road, neutral, or on Mars. Like that is a great accomplishment. Gunnar Stockton, they started to mention they I think Herbie brought this up at the very end of the broadcast, but man, in this Heisman race, like we're overlooking Gunnar Stockton. Man, like he is putting up some numbers. He is the
He's
reason
really
that
turning
Georgia's
it
winning
up
football
recently.
games. 5 total touchdowns tonight. He had as many touchdowns as he did incompletions tonight, Garrett. Like that's against this
And he was
Texas
responsible
defense.
for all of them. They scored 35
Yeah,
points. He threw for 4, ran for 1. And that one that he ran in, I gotta say this too, like, we overlook certain things, but that one that he ran in, the energy afterwards, the just, like, "This is my house" stuff, that tells me he's playing with loads of confidence. Like, this is a kid who knows he can do it, and a lot of this, I think, going into the season was like, "Oh, how can he establish himself?" And, "Yeah, he's got some talent, but can he figure it out?" He has it figured out. Like, he's been playing really good, and he is super, super confident right now. That's another reason why, like, you get a quarterback who's got it and starts playing confident, I don't want any part of that team. That's a really good team.
yeah, absolutely. And they've got a run game to match it. They've got a defense that's building confidence as well. And they've got a coaching staff that's been there before. And if you're betting on a team in the college football playoff, there's not a lot of coaching staffs that are going to be there this year that have been there before, been there, done that in a run like this. So yeah, Georgia's got a lot going for them. They are done. They're in the clubhouse in SEC play because they close with a couple non-conference games. They have a bye game next week, and then of course the big clean old-fashioned hate against Georgia Tech to close out
And
the
that's gonna
regular
be a
season.
fun one. That's gonna be
It's gonna
maybe
be
the
a
best
fun one. We'll
iteration of
talk.
that
We'll
game.
talk Jackets here in a second.
Yeah.
Not playing a lot of defense right now are the Jackets, but Haynes King and the boys are going to be up for that one. With again playoff implications, major playoff implications in that game on Black Friday. So, yeah, Texas for their part, they play Arkansas next week, and then the showdown with A&M. Just want to really quickly hit. You mentioned this off the top, but where do you see their playoff chances, their playoff future right now? Obviously, they need to beat A&M, but is that going to be enough if they can do that?
It's gonna be tough. We said it on the previous show that if anyone was getting in at 9-3 just off of their brand, it's probably Texas. But man, like, it's hard to think, like, what they've really done right. I guess at this point, the win over Oklahoma looks a lot better.
It does, yeah.
Again, this is what you do for, like, not beating Florida, like,
Vandy could still be a 10-2 team as well. So
yeah, so the
if
Vandy
they're
win
in
could look
a
good too. So
at large discussion against Vandy, it
it's
could be
just
good.
really hard to think, like, you've got a lot of teams that'll probably finish around the 10-2 mark in the SEC. It's hard to think that they would go down to if it's a 9-3 because they beat A&M, that would be a good win. But it's hard to think they would go down to a 9-3 Texas team unless they made the conference championship game in that situation, right? Like, you'd have to look at the tiebreakers, and I honestly have no idea how that works out right now. So it would be really interesting
It
to think
well,
about.
yeah, and Texas now has 2 conference losses. So they're all but eliminated from contention because they would
Well, and
need to.
the issue for them would be if they play in the conference championship game and then lose, you were like conference runner up in the championship game, but then have 4 losses. That's
Yeah,
tough.
I'm doing the quick math in my head, man. I don't think they can make it to the conference championship game
I
unless, well,
officially have
unless because they would need to beat A&M. That would only give A&M one loss. Georgia's in the
right.
clubhouse with one loss. Alabama
Oh,
could
yeah, so
get
that would do
two.
it.
Yeah,
Because they've
so
already got the loss to Georgia, even if they did,
exactly.
lose. Yeah, so yeah, that's it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Man,
Well,
that's crazy. So I guess, yeah,
uh,
they just really need to beat A&M and hope that Notre Dame loses a game or, uh,
yeah,
the
Notre
ACC
Dame stubbing their
implodes
toe. Yeah.
or, man, like, I don't know, just like a really bad Big 12 run here at the end of it. Like, it's at this point, it's starting to look pretty slim for them, even if they were to find a way to beat A&M, which again, like, that's gonna be an interesting one to think about for a couple weeks, but man, like, I don't know. I wouldn't overlook Arkansas the way they're playing offense, though. That's still, a losable game if they're not careful, so
Yeah, especially a bit. It's a classic letdown look ahead spot. I know that's a
mhm.
rivalry that people really care about that game on both sides, but Ooh, coming down from Georgia and looking ahead to A&M. That's a
Tough,
tough spot to play the Razorbacks. I
tough.
agree. Let's finish out our big three, our original big three on this one. We're gonna just drive by Notre Dame Pitt here because Pitt really didn't give us a reason to talk extensively about this game. Pat Narduzzi joked that they could lose this game 103-7 or whatever and still be fine. That is technically true.
Wish granted, okay?
Wish
This wasn't
granted.
a must-win
Yeah.
game for them. They're fine. Who cares?
Well, it couldn't have started much worse. Jeremiah Love had the long touchdown run, and immediately, I think the first play from scrimmage after that was the pick six to immediately go down 14-0.
And that run
Notre
was the
Dame
first
was
play of that drive too. So, like, it was 2
so two
straight
plays.
plays of zero
Yeah.
zero to, like, you had the ball, and 2 plays later, it was 14 nothing.
It's a rough scene, man. And yeah, game day was there. It was a fun environment for Pitt, but man, boy, did this shit team show up. Not to take anything away from Notre Dame, because this is one of the elite teams in our sport. I think they're going to be a problem in the playoff as well. But man, did Pitt just really take on the attitude of their coach in this one? Pitt's still very much alive in the ACC race, like Pat Narduzzi said. But this really kind of shows you where the ACC is at relative to everybody else in the country, does it not?
I mean, I think it does. It's and I hate saying it too because I really like a lot of the schools and the fan bases in the ACC, but it just feels like they can't get more than 1, maybe 1.5 good teams at a time. And, it seems like some of that mantle might be shifting towards Miami, which means that Georgia Tech's losing part of that too. So, like, whatever that energy is in the ACC where you're only allowed to have 1.5 good teams, like, it's moving somewhere there. You gotta make sure that that spirit of the good ACC team finds its place in one team because they otherwise, like, what is this conference looking forward to for the postseason? They haven't been super competitive. There've been some really embarrassing games. We can talk about that Clemson Louisville game later. That was a
Hmm.
disaster. But they just keep seeming to find ways to, like, shoot themselves in the foot and not end up showing up. And I get it because Notre Dame's a good team. Like, Notre Dame's very good. I picked them to make a statement. I thought that they needed to anyways. So there's no real shame in losing to Notre Dame like this. But I mean, good gosh, like, it's the cherry on top of what has been just a weird season for the ACC.
Notre Dame closes with Syracuse and Stanford. I think we can pretty much sharpie them in at 10-2. Is there any way they get jumped? Like, is there any way they get squeezed out of a playoff spot at 10-2? The only way I can think of is if they're up against Miami somehow for an at-large spot and they're both 10-2.
Yeah, I could see that. I think at this point, having them ranked ahead of Miami shows them what they think of both teams at this point. So I get it. Um, yeah, I just, yeah, man, I don't know at this point. I think they've probably got to. I mean, they're gonna have to win out. Like, obviously, they got to win the next 2 games. But I think it's hinted to that there's not a lot that's gonna jump Notre Dame at this point, both from branding and for the fact that they've done it really convincingly. Like, this was a convincing win. You won by what, 18? Like, that's a really, really good margin of victory. Stomped Arkansas earlier in the year. I said the same thing when they were playing a team in Arkansas that I was like, they're not very good, but they're beating them like they need to. And you know, go all the way back to right after the A&M game. What we talked about with this Notre Dame team was they needed to win games by big margins. They had to win the eye test. Uh, check, right? You can
Yeah.
check that one off. They have done everything they need to do. Massive credit to what Coach Freeman's been able to do in keeping them in that spot. That's a really, really, really well coached team that they've been able to down the stretch, not against the best teams in the world, but down the stretch, just dominate teams week in and week out to convince the committee that they're one of the best teams in the country.
Let's that's our big three. Those were the biggest games of the day, the most consequential games of the day. We'll go conference by conference here as we close things out, and we'll kind of give you a picture of the conference championship race as we have 2 weeks left in the regular season. Let's start in the SEC, Garrett. We kind of broke down this conference championship race um, almost fully already, but we'll start in the SEC. There's your SEC scoreboard on the screen. Got to start in Oxford, Mississippi with a 34-24 win for Ole Miss over Florida. Lane Kiffin was making things very difficult on his current team and his possible future team, the team that really wants him. It was making it very difficult on him. DJ Lagway had some really awesome moments in this one. Had the long touchdown throw to J. Michael Studevant in the first half. The Florida defense bowed up a couple times on the goal line to keep them in this one, but ultimately, man, the story is Quan Lacey. I don't remember what his final total was. I think it was over 230 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just an absolute unit. Dude needs to be still in an ice bath. I hope he is. I hope he's sitting there in an ice bath watching us tonight. I know he's not, but um, yeah, just a great performance by him to really will his team to victory and keep them alive in the SEC title race.
Well, and massive credit to their defense too. I mean, they had all the opportunities to just cave
Second
in.
half shutout, right?
Yeah, second half shutout. I mean, they played really well the second half. They blew some assignments in the first half, and I'm sure that we had some Ole Miss fans that were really upset about that. But look, they performed when they needed to. They got it done. It's a good win. Like it's still a talented Florida team. It's not a very good Florida team, but it's a talented Florida team. And Florida decided to show up tonight and play some good ball. Ole Miss found a way to beat them. They didn't really get out of their way for a little while, but when they punched it in, I was like, this kind of feels like this is it for Florida when they took that, I guess, 4-point lead, I was like, "Yeah, it's probably it." Right? I didn't think that Florida was really coming back at that point, just based on how good that defense had started to play.
Yeah, Ole Miss. This was really. I don't want to say this is their last landmine because they do have to go to Starkville for the Egg Bowl, and that can get just absolutely wild really quickly. And Mississippi State, I think, is going to be playing for bowl eligibility in that one, so they will have something big to play for outside of the rivalry. But yeah, Ole Miss is sitting pretty heading into postseason play. They're going to factor in. They need some tiebreakers to break their way to get into the SEC championship game. But Alabama losing today really opened up a door for them potentially as well. So they need to root for Texas. They need to root for Auburn, but that could potentially put in a three-way tie scenario. Ole Miss would play Georgia and get a rematch there in the SEC championship game. So lot to play for, lot to watch. Elsewhere in the conference, LSU snuck by Arkansas the 23-22. Kentucky all over Tennessee Tech, Tennessee all over New Mexico State, and Missouri. How about Missouri with Matt Zollers? I need to look up his stat line here just to see how they got to 49 points, but putting up 49 on Mississippi State, 49-27. Pulling it up here, doing some live radio. Looks like he threw for only 112 yards, but Ahmad Hardy, Garrett, have you seen his stat line?
Yeah, I was gonna say Ahmad Hardy is the hero of the day there at Missouri.
Yeah. So if you couldn't figure it out, I watched 0.0% of this game,
Yeah,
but
we were locked in
holy
on the other
crap.
good games of the night. That's a replay special for me. That's a catch it
Yeah,
tomorrow morning.
and I will be watching it now for Ahmad Hardy because
Mhm.
25 carries for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Ding, 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 ding.
That's 12 yards per carry if you're doing the
That's
math
pretty
at home.
good. That's
That'll win
pretty
you a lot of
good.
games. That'll play.
That'll get it done.
Jamal Roberts quietly had 5 yards per carry too. Like him a lot from
Yeah,
what we saw
yeah,
last
good
week
back.
against A&M. Yeah. Anything else that stood out to you in the SEC before we move
I
on?
like you talked about LSU Arkansas, slight win for them in a game that, for the boot, that's typically a interesting one, gets a little dicey. How about Michael Van Buren, right? Transferred over from Mississippi State. He's been the backup all year, hadn't been a very fun season there at Louisiana. And then he figures it out, right? He gets it done, right? 221 passing, 36 rushing. He looked pretty good. I think it could be kind of a fun season for him next year at LSU if he ends up being the quarterback.
Yeah, I like him a lot. Liked his game at Mississippi State. Um, boy, Garrett Nussmeyer, like, what is he gonna do? I don't
Sell
think he has
insurance, I
any.
think. I
That's so sad.
I just feel really
Like
bad for the
like
guy because, and the thing about it too is, I think for him, if he had a little better coaching this year, I know there were some complaints about the offensive staff when Kelly was still there. I think if he had a little bit better coaching this year, it could have done a lot better. But that just, I mean, it goes to show like development is a huge deal. Where people pick to play is a huge deal. And development doesn't just go with the staff that you currently have there when you're there. A lot of times it's going to be on your head coach to keep good staff. And that was part of the Brian Kelly failure is he didn't keep good staff, and then that's another quarterback, kinda wasted.
yeah, absolutely. Where do you want to go next? What conference you want to go to next?
Man, I mean, really,
Putting
there
you on the
wasn't a
spot
whole lot
here.
to talk about in the Big Ten. I mean, Indiana, Ohio State kinda took care of business, right? They just kinda workmanlike. I know it was kinda close for Indiana in the first half, but they just kinda got it done. Michigan, Northwestern was fun. USC, Iowa was fun, but I don't think there's, like, that much to do in the Big Ten. The
Well,
ACC is the fun conference right now.
the ACC is fun. Let's give the Big Ten just a second here because you mentioned Michigan and USC. Those are the two teams I
Mhm.
really want to zero in on. Yeah, you mentioned Ohio State, Indiana took care of business. Michigan squeaked by Northwestern. Bryce Underwood had a very bad second half, throwing a couple very untimely interceptions. But in USC, in a traditional, what we all come to know, a LA downpour. We all know that always happens in LA. But those two teams now, Garrett, if you're able to, could you pull up the Big Ten standings just really quickly? Put those
Yeah,
on
I
the
got you. Give
screen.
me a minute.
So I'll go radio for you here, but by virtue of winning those games, Michigan's sitting there at 6-1 in league play, and so is USC. So as we enter the last, everybody and their mother is penciling in Indiana versus Ohio State. Indiana is going to be in that Big Ten championship game. They just have Purdue left after a bye, so put them in at 9-0. Ohio State still has um, Rutgers at home, and then they go to Michigan. USC has Oregon and UCLA, and then Oregon has USC and Washington. Michigan, can't remember. I think it's Maryland that they play next week. Yeah, they're at Maryland. So, all that being said, you're going to go into the last week of the regular season here. I think if chalk holds, Oregon or USC is going to be 7-1. The loser is going to be 6-2. Michigan's going to be 7-1. Ohio State's going to be 8-0. We all know what that means, right? Ohio State's going into the big house and needs to beat Michigan to actually make the Big Ten championship game.
It's look, we've been all over Ohio State being, one of the best teams, if not the best team in the country, and that's still true. But oh boy, their issues with Michigan do not have anything to do with how good Ohio State is. Really doesn't have anything to do with how good Michigan is. There's some kind of voodoo curse on them, and they can't seem to win against Michigan in a long time. So that's an exciting one to think about. And honestly, think about this possibility for a second. So I think Indiana's obviously going undefeated. If Ohio State loses that game to Michigan, Michigan gets into the championship game at 10-2, and you know maybe even wins it, right? Something like that. Oregon finishes maybe 10-2. USC finishes maybe 10-2. How much of
They
that
both
10-2 or better is getting into the college football playoff? That's a lot of teams in the Big
well,
Ten that have a real chance at a bid.
Oregon and USC can't both finish 10-2, can they?
Well, so Oregon's
Well,
currently 9-1. They could
Oregon
lose to
could
USC
and then beat Washington,
and
I
then beat
guess. Yeah, that's true.
Washington, and
Yeah.
then USC could win out. So that's a lot of 10
I
and
don't
2.
I don't think that 10-2 Oregon needs to get in. Like that
Oh, I'd
that's
agree
that's
with
my
you.
hot
I
take.
definitely agree with you. I'm just saying that 10-2 Oregon who's been in the conversation versus a 10-2, I don't know, call it, I guess it won't be Texas
Vanderbilt.
anymore, but that was someone we had talked about. But
Vanderbilt.
there's
Like if they go 10 and
yeah,
2, beat Tennessee on the last week of the season.
10-2 Vanderbilt, 10-2 Oregon. That's hard to argue that Oregon won't make it in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm with you.
it's I don't think that the Big Ten should be a 5 bid league. But anything could happen. Like, anything could happen at this point. It's a really, really interesting end of the season. I'm glad that my team already has 10 wins. That's just kinda where I'm at in this point. I think the best fan bases right now that are most excited are probably Indiana and Texas A&M because you're going into the last part of the season feeling pretty good about your ability to not totally blow this thing. I would put Ohio State in that category, but I know that even if you feel, Ohio State fans like, "Hey, we're in a good spot. We're pretty confident." I know there's a piece of you that's nervous about going to the big house. I know that it's in there.
How could they not be, man? After how it's treated them the last few years, like
Yeah,
that
again,
that
they
that would have
haven't
me
beaten Michigan
so.
since pre-COVID. It's been
That's
a long
insane.
time.
Still insane to think about that. Yeah. So, man, rivalry week. Next week. I haven't even looked at the slate for next week. I'm sure it's great. It's probably fine, but rivalry week. That's just where my brain
It's
is
gonna be
at right
such
now,
a good
man.
week of college football, man.
Ugh. Oh man. All right,
Get
let's
your
go to the
leftover
ACC.
sandwiches ready because that Friday and Saturday, you do not wanna leave your couch, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's go to the ACC because, like you said a second ago, it is crazy. It's absolutely insane right now. Miami 41-7 over NC State. A big statement from the Canes. But maybe the biggest two results of the week in the conference, Georgia Tech holding on to beat Boston College 36-34, and Virginia thumping Duke 34-17 in a game that Duke was actually favored in by a score. Garrett, let's start with Georgia Tech Boston College here because that fourth quarter was just absolutely insane. Big play after big play to make that one just so uncomfortable for Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was down big, battled back, found a way to win the game. That's all that really matters. But boy, are they not impressing the committee. Like that, they have to. They could get a big win over Georgia if they found a way to beat Georgia in that rivalry game. That would be a massive statement for the committee, but it's looking like they are going to have to win their way in through the ACC championship. I don't see an at-large path for them right now.
I don't see an at-large path for an ACC team because look, we talked about Virginia and they were dominant against Duke. That's the first game they've looked dominant in gosh, I don't know how many weeks, maybe all season, right? They just haven't been a team that's gone out there and, blanked guys and done really good. Georgia Tech, like I don't know what's happening. I was excited about this team, obviously, and I'm still riding on the bandwagon, and I'm excited for that. But man, this just feels like a team that's backing its way into the playoff and is trying to do everything it possibly can to not let the Ramblin' Wreck fall apart. Right? It just feels like that thing's little rickety old car that it is, and it's starting to maybe come apart a little bit. And we didn't have time to fix that issue with the wheel, and something's coming loose in the alignment, and there's just a lot of stuff going wrong. There's some issues with the wreck right now, and uh, congratulations, you're here, you're 9-1, that's good, you get credit for winning. My team has something in common with you this week, is you won a game technically against a team that's very bad. But man, that should not put a lot of confidence in Georgia Tech fans right now. It's nerve-wracking to say the least that they're doing that against Boston College.
Yeah, and Boston College, I think, was 1-7 or
Yeah, they
something
got
like
one
that.
win all year.
Yeah, so whew, survive and advance. That's all that matters, and figure out a way to get to those next couple games and find a way to beat Georgia. That's really what it comes down to if you want an at-large bid. But elsewhere in the ACC, that Virginia win, man, like the whole conference is breathing a sigh of relief because the Cavaliers took care of business against Duke. Duke, if you haven't been following along, a lot of the country started to pick up on this week that Duke had a very good chance to make it to the ACC championship game on the backs of tiebreakers, despite them losing three out of conference games to teams like UConn and Tulane and Illinois, to name a few. I think the ACC, like I said, is very happy with this result just as a conference. But Virginia, whose hopes were hanging on by dear life, Chandler Morris comes in. We weren't sure if he was going to play. He comes in and he threw a couple interceptions, but he had a fantastic day overall, 316 and two touchdowns. And then Jamari Taylor just taking over in this one, 18 carries for 133 and two. That's the Virginia team that we thought could be an issue in the ACC, and they finally had a complete performance against a really solid Duke team. They're now all of a sudden back. They have my attention again down the stretch as we look into these tiebreaker scenarios.
Yeah, and they should because they're probably going to go 10-2, right? They have Virginia Tech, and they should beat them. Um, they're probably going 10-2. They should at this point be in their conference championship game, and if it's them and Georgia Tech, it's whoever wins that game is probably going to be the one that goes. So look, they needed a win. They needed a dominant win to just kind of like convince us that they could actually play football and not just like get lucky or like kind of technically find their way. Man, good for them though. Like good for them to find a way. You know, Pitt technically still hanging around there, SMU technically still hanging around there, but I don't think anybody could really make an argument for either of those 2 teams. Really disappointing on the just the narrative level that we won't get to see the Duke 8-4 and, Charlotte situation where they could go 9-4 and just ruin everything. It's really disappointing to me that we're not gonna see that, but it is what it is, right?
Well, I wouldn't count out SMU and Pitt just yet because as we go into, I'll go through the other finals real quick. Um, Wake Forest over North Carolina 28-12. Florida State handled Virginia Tech 34-14. And then there was that just debacle you mentioned on Friday night with Clemson finding, I guess, winning. Like we can call it that, I guess, 20-19 over Louisville. They did win the game, so yes, we call it a win. But
Clemson
it was
didn't
com-
win. Louisville lost. That was atrocious. I
that's
wrote down in
fair.
the notes, and I just want to kind of just stand on a box here for a second. This was the ugliest football game I may have watched possibly ever, just from
Ooh,
both teams' perspectives.
you did not watch Wake Forest SMU a few
Uh,
weeks ago.
Possibly not. It's fine. No, but this was the ugly football express. Down the stretch there, Clemson had an opportunity on the goal line to punch it in and go up. They fumble twice in a row. One of them was on fourth down, so it didn't matter, but they do that. At a certain point, they do take the lead. They take a lead by one. That was the final score. Louisville had a chance twice. They drove down, set themselves up, they hooked a field goal like nobody's business, and then they get the ball back because they botched the snap on the punt, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they're gonna not have to drive. They can just kick this one, play some ball control, you're good." Not only do they not play the ball control, they also duck hook it again. Like, I was sitting there like, "Oh, man, watch out for the push because, you miss left, you're gonna adjust right." He didn't adjust
No
anything. He
adjustment.
just said
Yeah.
more left, and he just missed it lefter, and it was just worse. And so, yeah, just atrocious. Clemson wasn't able to put it away. They have to punt the ball back, which is also ugly. And then they can't convert. They turn over on downs, and that was it. It was ugly, ugly football. I just really wanted to get that out. As soon as I watched that, I was like, this is disgusting. I'm disgusted at this from both teams. Louisville dropped out, and they should have dropped out. Like they're out of the race. They will not be ranked. Yeah, that was gross.
As we go down the stretch, though, we've got four teams that still have one loss in conference: Georgia Tech, Virginia at 6-1, Pitt and SMU at 5-1. Pitt and Georgia Tech play next week, so that's going to be a massive game in determining who makes it uh, another week in this final run here. SMU, man, like I need to run the tiebreaker scenarios, but if Georgia Tech can take care of Pitt and maybe Virginia stumbles against Virginia Tech, I don't know, or I haven't done the tiebreaker simulation to see if SMU could get in over Virginia, but they're hanging around. They have Louisville and Cal, Louisville at home and Cal on the road, so not easy, but they're still hanging around for a potential repeat trip to Charlotte, and a spot in the playoff maybe if they can find a way to win that game. God bless America. We love it here. Let's close things out for the Power Four conferences in the Big 12. Garrett, we had since Arizona. This is my Nostradamus moment. Arizona going into Cincinnati and winning that game, knocking Cincinnati pretty much out of the college football playoff and the Big 12 title race. Sixth straight game holding an opponent under 200 passing yards for Arizona. They picked off Brendan Sorsby twice. Three running backs had great yard per carry numbers. Noah Fafita and Chris Hudson had a great connection. Just a great day to be an Arizona Wildcat in this one. Bad day for Cincinnati. You had it, and it was shaping up, I think, to be a huge showdown with BYU next week. But unfortunately, that's now they can still play spoiler, but it's not going to have major implications for themselves out of that. Kansas State, I guess one we can call that. That's another one we can call it a win, I guess, over Oklahoma State 14-6. Arizona State got it done with Jeff Sims 25-23. Tech was up 38-2 at halftime, Garrett, of that one. Went on to win 48-9 over UCF. And Utah and Baylor. Baylor hung around for a little bit, but Utah ultimately pulled away 55-28. There was a brawl in that one, apparently.
And
That
that was about all the fight that Baylor showed in that one. That's,
Yeah,
hacky joke, but I'll say it. That's about all that they did. Not a good performance from them. What a fall apart season from a Bears team that I thought would actually be pretty decent. Like they had, going into the season, pretty good quarterback and all that, and just man, they have not played well.
it's falling apart.
Yep,
I don't think Dave Aranda is long for Waco at this
maybe
point.
not. Well, and now
The
the big thing now, I was gonna say BYU up 27-10 on TCU with all the happenings of the day. It's looking like that's gonna be our matchup in Arlington. It looks like, with Cincinnati out of the picture, there's a bunch of two-loss teams, and the only guys that have one loss would be Texas Tech and BYU right now.
Yeah, if chalk holds, it will be a rematch of Tech and BYU. The tiebreakers get very interesting as they always do if BYU or Tech falls to two losses. But the crazy thing, Garrett, in that one is Utah could find themselves in the championship over BYU or Tech if one of them loses because it would be a multi-team tie.
That is
So
ridiculous, but amazing. Like,
it's
it
ridiculous,
feels
but
wrong.
Houston and Cincinnati are kind of like screwing it up. So it's very interesting to follow. We'll
Once
have all those
again,
scenarios for you.
something I've always said, Houston and Cincinnati just screwing it up. Come on.
Good old NL Central rivalry there. But yeah, the tiebreakers are going to be fascinating to follow down the stretch. I want to close things out here tonight with the G5 because another thing that has just been thrown into disarray today is the G5 playoff race.
Well, I don't know if this is just a Trey thing. Trey, you're frozen on my side. A little bit of live radio here. Let me see. Is that a text from Trey Reeves? Yes, that is a text from Trey Reeves. Computer crashed. I will finish out the G5 section right here. We'll see if we can get Trey back in just a second. I'm going to go and see if I can sit him backstage for just a minute while we try to get him back. But G5 race, let me just go ahead and stick this thing up on over here. We had ECU at 30. So ECU beat Memphis. That's a big upset there, obviously 31-27 over them. We had Navy winning 41-38 over USF. Also a pretty big upset there. And then UNT dominating today as I pull up these standings in the American. Looking here, I'm seeing it's Navy, Tulane, and UNT, and ECU all with one loss in the American right now. UNT obviously with the one loss on the season. All those teams are going to be really interesting to see who's going to pull this one out, who's going to, kind of coming down to the wire here in the American, who's going to be the team that has the best shot to make the playoff out of the group. And then the other one here, James Madison out of the Sun Belt, they win 58-10 over App State. It wasn't even really close. They've been really dominant down the stretch as well. So kind of just looking at the G5, I'm curious to see what Trey would have said in terms of his teams in terms of best teams shot to make it. For me right now, I think it's got to be a team like a UNT if they can figure out a way to finish this season and jump into that conference picture. That would be a really good spot for them. As it stands right now, it looks like Navy and Tulane are at the top of this conference. Both of them with the one loss as well. If that ends up being your game in the American, that's your championship game, you could start to have some problems there if those are your two teams, Navy and Tulane. So now that Trey is back, I'll ask him, who do you think has the best shot out of the American to make the playoff? Or does this really open up the door for James Madison?
I think the door's open for James Madison now.
Yep.
It's wide open. It looks like they might be getting game day next week for
Which would be
Washington State,
so
which is
big.
really cool for James Madison. They've had it a couple times, but it's always cool when game day goes to a place like that. Yeah, the American is really up a creek now with how these tiebreakers could sort themselves out. I guess UNT at 11-1 is the best chance now. Maybe Tulane if they can finish the season at 9-2, but like
Yeah.
it's a mess, and I don't know if either of those teams would be ranked ahead of an 11-1 JMU.
Yeah, I mean, that was some of what I was saying is like UNT's got to find their way into the conference championship game for the American because outside of that, that's a couple of two-loss teams that they're going to be looking at for their, conference championship game between I think right now as it stands it's Navy and Tulane. UNT has to find their way in. Like they just do because that's the Americans'
Well,
best shot I think at the playoff.
and the American does a weird thing where any multi-team tiebreakers that didn't play each other, it just goes to computer rankings. So they just plug it all into a
Oh
computer and we find out
no.
on Sunday. So it's going to
So we
be
don't even get the algorithm ahead of time to know?
Well, it's a combination of like the Massey rankings and the Saragon rankings and SP plus and
Man.
all
Well,
kinds
then
of
look,
fun stuff.
UNT scoring a butt ton of points has gotta be good for that, right? Beating these
It
teams
has to be.
53-24. I mean, they're doing everything they can. This is a team that can really score, so I feel like this would be the most fun team to see. Yeah, I know James Madison scores points, but Sun Belt's maybe a little bit different than the American. I think that this would be the most fun team to see try to go out there and take a big swing at, like, the 5 seed, you know?
Absolutely. I think that'd be
So
fun. You were saying the other night too that the offense would be more fun than a defensive oriented team. If Navy can sneak in and run the triple option and just ground and pound somebody, that would be really fun. But
and
this
whoever
James
gets the 5
Madison
seed is
team,
interesting too because, like, if that's a 5 seed, like, 1 loss Texas Tech conference champ against a Navy team with a good defense, I could see that being a fun matchup.
yeah, absolutely. And this James Madison team is really fun too, man. Like they went into Louisville, played them tough. I know that hasn't aged super well, but uh, did a great job in that game, and they've been blowing everybody out recently. So they've got a lot of firepower as well. Thank you for covering for me there. While
"Nah,
my
you good, man.
computer
Stuff goes down. It's all good."
literally just crashed. I have no idea what happened there, but it bounced back quickly.
Crashed
So
and burned, unlike our Texas A&M Aggies today.
whoop to that. Shout out to Mitch as well. He is not
Oh,
with us
yeah.
tonight, but
Go
if
check
you're
out our
not
Twitter
following,
for that one. That was crazy.
yeah, Mitch literally saved the game. He just started walking and in true Forrest Gump fashion, just didn't stop until the job was done.
Look,
Um,
like the ancient Israelites to Jericho, he kept walking and the 27-point deficit fell down.
absolutely. Absolutely. So shout out to Mitch. He's really the real MVP. Marcel Reed, I guess, did some stuff in the second half, but it was really Mitch
He was okay, I
walking around the
guess. You know,
Metroplex.
439, nothing to sneeze at, whatever. Okay, it's fine.
Well, let's call it there, my friend. Let's call it a night. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, listening to this live or listening to this later on. Again, make sure that you are subscribed wherever you get the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever that may be. It helps us out a lot. Leave a review if you don't mind. Just give us some feedback. It really helps us with the algorithm. And make sure you're following along on social media as well as we close out this regular season. Look forward to bowl season and the playoffs. So much content coming down the pipe as we close out this college football season.